anywhere. So this is an absolute rippling effect what's going on. But we gotta, this war of attrition. We've got to be patient. We've got to weather the storm. It's very costly, very tiring, very upsetting, but we've got to achieve those goals. So we need patience and we need to grind down our enemy and take out the leaders. The other big news, Brandon, is that now that the supreme leader's son has been chosen, apparently an hour or two ago, he was wounded in an attack. Trump is already threatening him. He's already saying he is a target. So we need to pray. We need to pray for our soldiers, pray for these leaders that they continue to do the work and take out our enemies' leaders. When the enemies' leaders are taken out, it's a moral victory, and it sends a message to all the top officers in the Iranian army. We said the other day that a number of them are now defecting. They're pulling out. They're leaving their soldiers in the battlefield. This is what we need to do. We need to crumble from the top.
Aaron Lavarco, brought to you by our foundation, worldviewfoundation.com. If you appreciate our reports, keep them coming, folks. Keep them coming. We have to have your support to make it all come to pass. Worldviewfoundation.com. Worldviewfoundation.com. Thank you, Aaron, for your excellent report. Thank you, folks, for your support. And Lord willing, Aaron and I will be back as we continue to bring you, I think, news and information that you're not going to get anywhere.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
I just spoke to the President of the United States 20 minutes ago about the Gulf states and their involvement. And what he told me was this. Iran had thousands of missiles pointed at all these Middle Eastern countries for the last 4 months. They were going to take over the Middle East, meaning Iran. They were going to control it all. The UAE, Qatar, Oman, and Saudi Arabia. They had 1,200 missiles pointed at these countries. All these nations were afraid of Iran, and they are not anymore. And they had reason to be afraid. We have knocked the hell out of them like no other nation could, and they still have remnants left. Just wanted you to respond to that.
Well, this is why the president, one of the reasons I think he did why he did this now. Imagine, we're seeing how the Iranian regime is behaving now. Imagine if the president had kicked the can like so many of his predecessors had, and at the rate that Iran was producing these drones and ballistic missiles, had tens, if not hundreds of thousands years from now. That's the shield that Secretary Rubio has been talking about, behind which they would then develop a full-blown nuclear program, which we know they intended to do. They were not negotiating in good faith. The reason President Trump went now is because they're at their weakest point. And he's not the type of president to kick the can and let future generations have to deal with a much stronger nuclear-armed Iran to then truly hold not just the region, but the world hostage.
Ambassador, they think Israel's the problem, but those Gulf states know Iran's the problem.
Good afternoon, America. This is the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday again, and we're live on World YouTube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, folks, the world it really is on fire, and the flames are spreading fast. We just saw it. Iran on the brink of dominating the region, according to the President of the United States, and until the U.S. and Israel stepped in with decisive preemptive strikes starting in late February. As of today, March 9th, those joint operations continue, hammering Iranian military sites, nuclear facilities, oil infrastructure now, and leadership. Reports confirm the death of Supreme Leader Khamenei and dozens of top officials in massive airstrikes across Tehran, Isfahan, and beyond. Iran's retaliating with missiles and drones hitting U.S. bases, Israeli targets, and even disrupting Gulf shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. And the fallout, oil and gas prices are skyrocketing. Brent crude was pushing past $100 a barrel, I believe, in recent days. And there's fears of 100 plus, maybe even up to $187 a barrel if these disruptions continue. Russia's supplying intel, according to some reports, and possibly even more than that to Iran, benefiting from what? The chaos as their own energy exports surge. This isn't just about nukes. It's insurgency, Marxist Islamist alliances, threats from Venezuela to China, and now whispers that Cuba could be next in this push against these threats. Well, my guest today is retired Special Operations pilot and president and CEO of CDM Press, L. Todd Wood. He's also part of the new Pentagon Press Corps that's demanding honesty and demanding facts and answers to those facts and delivering real reporting to the people of the United States of America. Todd, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show.
Colonel, glad to be back. Thank you for having me on again. Really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it. I was telling the space audience before the show that you and I have been talking about how we want to bring objectiveness to the discussion instead of willy-nilly letting propaganda from either side or all sides come into this thing. So we wanted to do more coverage of this with the two of us. I don't mind showing the clips from the UN ambassador, the U.S. UN ambassador, Mike Waltz, and I don't mind those facts being talked about and everything. But one of the things that I'm concerned about, though, is that are we getting the whole story that can be told in an unclassified setting? Do you think we are?
Well, it's obvious to me there's, I would use the word narratives being created on both sides of this conflict. I would say all three sides, because you have Iran and their propaganda. Then you have what's going on in the U.S., where you have really two sides here in the West in general, adding to their propaganda to the mix. So I think what you said about real reporting, I wrote that down, is extremely important. And we have to show leadership in our reporting and try to tell the truth and give as much objectivity as we can to this whole discussion. I don't think we're getting all the information. No, I think there is, we're at war. So the Department of War is going to try to shape the message. I mean, that is information warfare. That's what's going on. I didn't want to be here in a big war. I don't think you did, but we're here. So how do we get through this so that our children and the country that we swore an oath to, comes out the best, comes out on top, and lays the gateway to the golden age for our citizenry that we really desire and expect and deserve after all this fighting we've done for the last 5 or 6 years. So I think I read an article, I think it was maybe Zero Hedge this morning, about this is really the great game going on here, and there's multi-layer effects, but the big loser in all of this is China. I think no matter how a lot of people are trying to spin it, I think China is really on the ropes after this. They've got some real problems. Now they have real energy issues to pile onto their demographic issue. And so I think that is really the overlay of all of this, and we need to see it through that lens.
Yeah, I think you should. I think Americans definitely should see it through that lens, and our allies for sure. Yeah, because I think you're right. I mean, the facts bear that out. But there's a big if there, right, Todd? If we can maintain the gains strategically that we've accomplished in this, we're just into the second week of this. There are over 20,000 known targets, and there will be pop-up targets that get created by this target. So we have a long ways to go into what the president initially said was about 5-week air and naval campaign. But we are seeing. Are you seeing the same signs of success that I'm seeing from a military perspective?
Well, yes. I mean, of course, we don't have full air supremacy over Iran. We do it in pockets, and we can create it in pockets if we want to. But to use the president's own words, this is not going to be, in his team's own words, a long-term conflict, slug it out in the Middle East as we did in the past. We need to find that pathway to make this as short as possible and to mitigate the effects economically, as you mentioned, with oil, and the effects on the Gulf states, which are our allies, which, there's a lot of narrative being created out there that they're angry with us, and, that we didn't protect them or whatever. I think you're more on the right side, that they want this problem removed too. And there's always what you say in public and what you say behind the scenes.
Mhm.
And I think they want this problem removed, and they are willing to go through some amount of pain to get there. The question is how long that lasts, what amount of pain that is, and how it impacts global energy supplies. I mean, we really are impacting their ability to pay for their own, water in their own countries. Desalinization, all of this
Mhm.
is really on the table, and really could create chaos in these kingdoms if it goes on too long. So I want to use the president's own words that this is not going to be a long-term fight, and it's over when it's over, and as quickly as possible.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the same conversation that you heard him say at the beginning. Hey, we're about 5 weeks is what we were thinking. He said,
Hmm.
and he continuously and continues to say those words, and so does Secretary of War Hegseth. So does the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. I mean, the only outliers out there are some whack jobs like Lindsey Graham and those kind of people that kind of go off this reservation in their comments
Oh,
sometimes. But from
did you
an
know
executive branch perspective, I think we're all on the same. They're all on the same page, right?
I was going to say, I think Lindsey Graham's been promoted to Secretary of State. Did you see that? I mean, he's out there saying there's going to be consequences if Saudi doesn't do this or that, or, I mean, I don't know what he's been smoking, but it's pretty good. I mean, he's
Uh,
out there just just
yeah.
slinging directives at other countries, and it's just wild. Why the
Mhm.
president lets him do this, I don't know.
Well, up until about a couple hours before the show started, when I saw the reporting about the missile being fired at Incirlik Air Force Base in Turkey that had been shot down by what appears to be an SM-3 based on the material that I saw was left of our missile. Uh, there hadn't really been any ballistic missile rounds fired for the previous 24 hours until I saw that, at least that I could find, that was being reported on outward from Iran. Anyway. Uh, do you
Well,
see
I
that as I do? Do you see that this great reduction since the beginning of the conflict over time to be a mark of success? I mean, it's not perfect, but it is a mark of success, right?
Well, their heads are down for sure, and we have
Yeah.
to use whatever means we have to discover where the additional target set is. You would know more about that than me. They are saying, the Department of War is saying that they've reduced it, 80, 90% as to their capability. But they have the ability to pop things up. They're decentralized. We all know that. It's in the press. Command structure, decentralized fire and fire control system against aircraft overhead, or against targets in the Gulf, or against our forces elsewhere. So it's hard to say. I think we have to get to a point where some objectives are achieved, and then say, okay, we're done, declare victory, and go home. I don't think we're there yet. It's going to be, it's going to be a few more weeks.
Well, yeah, I mean, numbers of targets that are publicly being announced are only 2,000 at this point. And at the beginning of the war, there were most projections were saying 20,000 plus targets were available
Hmm.
for these objectives. And the objectives are to destroy their ability to launch ballistic missiles, destroy their production capability to launch ballistic missiles, and to destroy their navy. Those are the three that keep coming up from Secretary Rubio, the president, Secretary Hegseth, and General Kane to a degree. I mean, he sticks to the strictly military stuff most of the time. But those are typical military objectives. Do you see any evidence, or has any been made public, that we are being successful along the lines of destroying their production capability?
I don't have insight into specific numbers as to what, unless, I'm talking to sources. I talked to a source this morning, actually a financial source, who was in Japan, and there were a lot of Europeans and Russians there, and the vibe in the room, and this is a pretty high level guy, and at a government level,
Mhm.
and he said that they are shocked and awed, if you will, by the how far the United States and Israel together are ahead of anyone else in the world in the war fighting capability, as in laying out targets and finding targets and destroying targets with AI and other systems, and really just have leapfrogged most of the world, and that's on display, and they're really, I guess, wowed by this whole thing. That's the vibe that I'm hearing from international sources.
Yeah, a big indicator of that is the lack of them launching hypersonic cruise missiles or anti-ship missiles, isn't it?
Yeah, and there are
either,
some hits.
They're either holding on to them or we're destroying them in their bunkers. One of the two.
I think it's probably both. I mean, and we haven't seen a lot of targets or heavy hits in Israel in the media, although there's some, and obviously that's being restricted. And but you haven't seen the wholesale, like in the 12-day war, and maybe that will come, of rounds hitting Tel Aviv and other Taifa and military facilities. Nevatim, I think, was the air base down in the south in the desert. So we haven't seen that. Maybe it's just been restricted, but maybe and the Israelis are very good at stopping media from coming out, as they're in an information war too.
Yeah. I said the other day, last week on the show, that they're really good at restricting military targeting information. So we really don't know what's been successful on their military targets for the most part. But the civilian targets, they do put that out. And I think that if they had more than 10 deaths civilian-wise, they would be talking about it, quite frankly. From what I could tell, there's only been 2 buildings took direct hits. The rest of them are all like, sideways type stuff. We got to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about this supposed story about Russians giving intelligence information to the Iranians for their targeting purposes. And there is some evidence that could be true. We'll be right back with L. Todd Wood, CDM Press.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
I also asked the president about the rise in oil prices, $100 a barrel, and he said this about the Strait of Hormuz. These ships got to go through the Strait of Hormuz and show some guts. There's nothing to be afraid of. They have no navy. We sunk all their ships and all but 20% of their launchers. What is your reaction and that message to the merchant ships, and that's the Gulf states too, to start getting that oil going through there?
Well, to the president's point, we've destroyed their Air Force, destroyed their air defenses, destroyed 80-90% of their launchers and missile capability, and sank their entire Navy. This is about, I think, emotion. It's irrational. We have eliminated the threat for these both merchant ships, and commerce needs to start moving. In addition to that, the Development Finance Corporation, led by Ben Black, the president and secretary, and he announced that we'll put insurance in place just as an additional safeguard. So these ships need to start moving. I understand from talking to Secretary Wright, our energy secretary, that what they call Suez Max, which is a super tanker, has moved, and we're asking the rest to follow suit. We'll give them the protection they need, and we are knocking the snot out of Iran's capabilities. But again, one more reason why we had to do it now and not wait until they had even additional capability to not just hold the region hostage, but the world's energy supplies. Enough is enough. They've been doing this for 47 years. They started this war 47 years ago. Thank God President Trump is doing what's necessary to end it.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast, and it's More War Monday, and we're talking Epic Fury. What are the real effects that we think we're seeing? What are we achieving? And the big question is, how long will it take, amongst others? Todd, that was about the oil and the Straits of Hormuz. And, overnight, when I got up this morning, I check all the three main maritime trackers. And overnight, the traffic started moving again. Now, you have to watch it closely because you'll see their transponders get turned off and then come back on the other side through the Straits. So as opposed to yesterday and the day before where traffic was nearly zero, there was a big gap being created between the Gulf of Oman and the Straits of Malacca, which is a major issue when it comes to keeping the flow of oil going. Are you concerned about the prices or the Iranians' remaining ability to do what they call a blockade? I find that specious at best that they might think they have the capability to close the Straits of Hormuz.
Well, I think Trump will do what's needed. I saw a report today. He's already looking at options, whether that's the strategic oil reserve or whatever. But really, we have enough oil for our needs with what we have now from Venezuela. And, obviously our own energy domestically, we are, what's the word? I mean, we're self-sufficient or I forget the term he used. But so I think the oil thing can be managed. And you saw that with Trump or Bessent taking off some of the sanctions off the Russians so that they can move oil into the supply system freely and supply India especially. And I think there were some other sanctions that were lifted. You mentioned the Russians targeting others. I think that, yes, they're probably doing that. But, we have to realize we've been doing that for 5 years against them. We've been giving them intelligence for targets deep inside Russia. The Russians are they work off strength. And it's kind of like back to Genghis Khan days. It's the way they roll, right? I mean, I've dealt with them. They just, they respect or they don't respect. And even if they're your friend, if you screw them over, they're going to do the same thing back to you, just to show you they can. And I think that's a lot of what this is, more of just because if they don't, then they look weak to their people that they're trying to look strong to inside their own country and around in their neighborhoods. So I think that there still is some room for some kind of economic cooperation between the United States and Russia when this is over. At least I hope so. I hope that comes. And I also think this rise in oil is part of this great game also because it's really pressuring, as I said, China, but also the European capitals, the globalist capitals who have destroyed their own energy system and are under China's thumb, Manchurian governments across Europe, Berlin, Paris, the UK and Germany.
So who would have had to make that decision to take the oil sanctions off of Russia?
Who made it? Bessent. Bessent's a huge player, and Bessent is, I think, advising the president well on the economic issues and how to, and not just this, but from an overall sense of how to manage our debt. There's a lot of very interesting concepts and techniques and ways of managing our sovereign debt that Bessent has brought to the table. It's fascinating to watch if you know what to look for, like driving down the cost of some of these long-term securities that we have, in some areas 50, 60%, and then buying them back and at a discount and reducing the overall level of the federal debt that way, which is a fascinating way of doing it. Yes, you have to refinance, but there's really a lot of interesting things that they're doing. And I think Bessent is a smart guy, and I think he probably is all over this oil issue.
Yeah, I think he is too. And the there's an economic aspect to this. Obviously, it's oil, and that's economic too. But there's an economy aspect to this too. Do you think the president approved? I know he proved it. I don't think Bessent would have made that call on his own. So my educated guess is that the president approved it. From that perspective, do you see a play in progress on the Ukraine-Russia war? Maybe
I do. I think this is all wrapped in this. I think the president, and the way I view this, and I think the president has a similar view, because it's the lack of a better term, the MAGA view of what the country wants, is to end an unnecessary war that is just hurting us long term, which was the goal, one of the goals of the Ukraine conflict, was to hurt the U.S. militarily. And so the president doesn't want to encourage that war, wants it to end. Iran, however, is another issue. It does directly threaten the interests of the United States, as in our allies in the Gulf, as the nuclear issue, economically with oil. Ukraine can't do any of that. All Ukraine can do is drag us into a nuclear war. So with the biggest nuclear power, this Iranian thing, Russia, you have to see what Russia is not doing. Russia is not moving ships, they're not moving troops, they're not moving aircraft in a threatening manner, as far as I can tell, in the Iranian theater. I think they're saying that they support Iran and maybe make a few phone calls, but they're not saying we're going to help you beat the United States. They're saying we're your friend, because they have to. If they don't, it looks like us with the Kurds when we just threw them under the bus when they weren't effective anymore. Now they don't want to fight in Iran. So you have you have to show your allies that you're a real ally.
Well, now that you mentioned that, are the Chinese doing anything to help their ally, Iran?
I haven't seen anything in concrete. I mean, I have seen some reports that they are helping to, replace equipment, supply certain areas, but you don't see the massive. I mean, they built the Belt and Road, right? Why aren't they massively supplying Iran? Maybe it's for fear that we'll target it. And this all is in play, and you can see the steps. I think we mentioned before on your show or my show, I can't remember, all the steps that have come before this, like the Trump route for international peace and prosperity in Armenia, which connected Azerbaijan and Turkey on the Iranian border. That you brought the Turkey and Azeris into your fold, and you see the Azeris, and the Azeris have been supplied by Israel for some time, and it's on the Iranian northern border. So, but they are in our camp, and if they had not gotten that peace deal, maybe they would not have been in our camp. So this has been laid out in steps, I think, over the last year. You can see it clearly now.
Yeah, you can. You were mentioning before I interrupted you about the who's being hurt the most by the oil being stopped up in the Straits of Hormuz. China, obviously, because we've got their Venezuela oil. Now we've got the Iranian oil bottled up. That's about 25% of their imports, from what I understand. But then you mentioned the globalist European capitals. Talk more about that and why we would want to do that.
Well, these European capitals, not the peoples, but the capitals, or at least the, for lack of a better word, what do they call it now? The heritage Americans, or the heritage Europeans that are in Europe are on our side, but not these governments. And they are actively, as I said, trying to get us into World War III and to weaken us further and to destroy the globalist enemy, which is the Russian Federation, along with the Western Christian civilization. So they are being weakened by this because they have destroyed their own energy supplies. And now with oil spiking is really going to impact the, well, they have no legitimacy left, but the ability for Macron and Mersch and, and Starmer to govern, because everybody's been putting up with so much crap with the migration and everything. Now you got, I can't even heat my home or power my business or buy food because of inflation, because everything costs so much more to bring in food. So that is going to impact them. And it could be, I try to see the consequences of all these actions. And that's one consequence that I definitely see, is Europe is being harmed by this. And maybe that's intentional, because they're not our friends. They're just not. These governments are not our friends. They're trying to hurt us any way possible. Trump's pressured them to do certain things, like in Diego Garcia, et cetera. But if they could, they give it all to the Chinese. That's just a fact. Yeah. So they're trying to maintain some kind of public persona of being Western and as an ally of the United States, but they're really not at all.
Yeah, just like they try to think that they're in opposition to Russia and then they buy natural gas from Russia.
Yeah, a lot of it.
Right.
A lot of it.
Yeah, a lot of it. A lot of it. Yeah. Exactly. And those
I think
haven't been turned off, right?
Yeah, no, they haven't. In fact, now they're saying they're going to rebuild nuclear power. That's going to take years. But these people want to remain in power. The Ukraine war was all about that. And I think the Ukraine conflict is definitely part of all this. There's the other factor that a lot of the munitions that we were sending to Ukraine are allowing to be bought by the Europeans for the Ukrainians. They're being sent to the Gulf. I think that's a good thing. I mean, if we can shut down the weapons flow to Ukraine, in my opinion, it's not against the Ukrainian people, but the war needs to be over. There's 50,000 Slavic Christians dying every month in that theater, and it really needs to stop.
And is that on both sides?
Well, that's kind of a total on both sides. Yeah. So I know that's around 25 to 30 on the Ukrainian side, and I think less on the Russian side. I'm just ballparking that figure.
Yeah, that's a lot,
Yeah.
As we've talked about many, many times. On the UK piece to this, because they're not really part of the EU anymore, but Starmer's like, is he really, from your perspective, held hostage by the Islamists that are becoming nearly the majority in his government and his nation at this point? That's what he's acting like, from my perspective.
Well, that, in my opinion, is a vector or a tool or a tactic by the globalists to destroy Western civilization, is to bring in all these Islamists. So, yes, he is, but he's really beholden to the globalist puppet masters that are telling him what to do. I mean, he is him, Macron and others are destroying their countries on purpose. They are destroying Western civilization, Christian civilizations on purpose. And the faster they can do that, they're on a schedule. And I think this really interrupts that ability to do that, because it's really going to pressure the people. And the people are going to get really angry if this continues and oil is $200 a barrel. We will survive. There will be some pain, but we will survive. But Macron and Merge and Starmer may not.
Yeah, absolutely right. Maybe this is a strategic move to force them back into the fold of protecting Western civilization, instead of giving away ground that we bled over. The Western civilization, have bled over thousands of years with the Islamists, and now we're just giving it away to them like Spain is doing. All right, we'll be right back after this. This time I'll have the clip of the Russians giving intel to the Iranians. I had my clips messed up, but it happens on live TV. I'm Rob Maness.
What if millions around the world could access Bible teaching and worldview training for free right now without hitting a paywall? That's exactly what happens every day at worldviewtube.com because of the Worldview Weekend Foundation. We don't lock our live stream behind PayPal. We don't restrict our content to members only. Instead, the Worldview Weekend Foundation helps cover the cost of delivering free educational and ministry programming to people across the nation and around the world. And it's not just programming. My Sunday night church service, where I taught verse by verse through Revelation for 18 months, and now I am teaching through the book of Daniel, is made possible through the support of our church, Worldview Weekend Foundation. If you believe this kind of truth-centered biblical teaching must continue, donate today. Go now to worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address and phone number there if you'd rather give by phone or mail. That's worldviewfoundation.com. Thank you.
End it.
And to close this, Russia is helping Iran with targets against us, our facilities in Bahrain, office buildings in Saudi Arabia where the CIA is located. At the same time, Ukraine is helping us with drone technology. What does that tell you about that conflict? And whose side, who's on?
Well, Russia has now lost its largest manufacturer and supplier of drones, these Shahed drones that have been so devastating. Oh, by the way, so have the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, and everyone else. Russia's also lost a supplier of ballistic missiles. So that symbiotic relationship has to break. Special Envoy Witkoff has delivered a very tough message. And at the end of the day, this kind of axis of evil is going to be broken. Iran is no longer going to be a threat and no longer going to be a supplier to China and Russia.
And Ambassador, I just had a chance to watch you go at it with the Iranian foreign minister, and you made America really proud. And you kept your temper, which I wouldn't have been able to do. Ambassador, thanks so much.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're talking Epic Fury today, the combined operation between the United States, Israel, and now our Gulf Arab allies, because many of them having been attacked without provocation from their soil by the Iranians' independent forces that are out of control by design, by the way. They have entered the fight, and there have even been some reported kinetic attacks by air forces and Navy forces on Iran by some Gulf Arab states. My guest today is L. Todd Woods, CEO of CDM Press, CDM Press is in the Pentagon Correspondence Pool now, and also a retired Special Operations helicopter pilot, United States Air Force. Todd, that was the clip that I was supposed to show the first or the second segment, but anyway, once you get past Kilmeade's, look, see, they're against us stuff like we've been telling you in the Ukraine war, blah, blah, blah. He did leak out there a fact that the Ukrainians apparently are helping us somehow with counter-drone warfare. What have you heard about that, and what does it look like? Do we know?
Well, as they should, right? I mean, how much have we given them over the last? And of course, we helped start this war, or enabled and pushed for this war. So there's an argument on both sides, but they should be helping us because we are their lifeline for survival. If we walk away, the war ends, and Ukraine will look different. I mean, that's just a simple fact. So I think that's what needs to happen, with some kind of, broker deal. But what does it look like? I think they are. Look, let's be honest, they have a lot of expertise, and they have been forced to adapt. I know a lot of Ukrainians, they're very smart. They're very innovative. There's a lot of ingenuity there. A lot of it comes from the Soviet days, where you had to, make do with what you have, and there's no more budget, nothing else coming. So you have to survive. And that's what they have done. And they've developed systems by innovative technologies and processes and equipment and ways to manufacture that are very cheap and extremely effective. So of course they should be giving that to us and our allies. And I think that's probably ongoing. I'm sure they don't want to send people, but I think Zelensky thinks that this is a way to keep him alive a little while longer, and maybe say, okay, we'll send people to help, but you know what, you got to supply us for 6 more months or something. That's probably the deal, or that he's trying to work in the background. But it's a corrupt government, and it needs to go. And I really feel for the Ukrainian people, and we need to find a solution for them as well.
And I'll tell you what, if they pull ground force resources to send to help us, the Russians are going to be watching that
yes,
to see where their opening is, because they haven't stopped, right? I mean, this show isn't about the Ukraine-Russia war, but they still continue to conduct ground operations and grind it out. They haven't set some kind of stop line, have they?
No, you're correct, and they are continuing, and you are seeing many of the Western propaganda outlets start to put the limited hangout out there and try to tell the truth a little bit. And yes, I think Foreign Affairs came out last week and said that Ukraine is not winning, they're losing. So that's a big tell that DC is preparing to, and maybe that's because they got another war that they can focus on and make the money on there, so they don't need Ukraine anymore. This matrix of corruption that's inside of our defense establishment and in the globalist, way of impacting the world that makes them money. But that's definitely going on.
Well, at least we're diverting the weapons to something that's in our vital national interest, because the Iranians have been at war with us for 47 years. And as somebody that started being susceptible to being killed by them at age 17, when I put the uniform on, it really doesn't bother me that we're doing this. But it would bother me if there was some massive ground invasion and occupation a la Iraqi freedom or the extended Afghani war, that were both stupid ideas to begin with. I'm not seeing any evidence that, and you would need somewhere between 600,000 and 1 million troops to invade and occupy this country and get it under control. I'm not seeing any preparations whatsoever for that anywhere in the world. Am I missing something?
There are some units on standby. I know that for a fact. Certain units that were in a situation like this would always be called. And there are reports, I can't confirm them, that many other units have been activated for some type of possible deployment. That may be just, preparation just in case and being thorough and responsible in a military campaign. So that is going on. I have heard reports, and I think they're probably credible, that they are looking at possibly seizing Karg Island, which is the distribution point in the Persian Gulf for all of the, I think 90% of the Iranian oil. They don't want to destroy that. They could, that could have been the target set day one, and they could have no more oil flow. But then any new government would, like in Venezuela, would not have a way to pacify its people and to feed its people. So they haven't destroyed that, but I have seen plans they may take that. That's on the table. It should be in any kind of conflict. If we need to go in there and once just secure the oil, the Iranians could blow it up. They're kind of doing, what Saddam Hussein did, like blow up all the wells. They could blow it up if we get too far down their line. So I think that's what the president is worried about. But you may have too, but I spent time in the Persian Gulf, landing on ships during the first Gulf go around, and it's a dangerous area, and you have to prepare for any kind of contingency, and I think they're probably doing that.
Yeah, I've been orbiting over the Persian Gulf, over Karg Island, just off of it before, and thought our receivers were coming up, but it turned out to be two Iranian F4s. So unintended scheduling of a top-off there. They didn't get any, so to speak, for that matter, but it is a very dangerous place. Those are the type of forces that don't surprise me at all. But to do a massive, to occupy Iran, just from a force perspective, logistically, that's not happening. The Iranians have an interesting defense thing. I think they call it Mosaic, or it's been called that, where and that's what you're seeing with these independent shots coming out of these missile units and drone units going to just whatever targets are on their books. I call them last stand targets, but it's an intentional, independently distributed defense organization and mechanism, isn't it?
It is, and I would add one more piece to that. There's going to be, I saw a report today, I can't confirm it, that there's some kind of communication that went out to the Iranian diaspora, possibly to sleeper cells to activate them, blah, blah, blah. There's the other piece I want to make people aware of is there very well could be false flags. There very well could be all kind of things happen in our country, in Europe, in the Gulf, and you really have to vet the information and come to the Rob Maness Show and to cdm.press, and we'll try to do our best to vet the information. We don't put anything out unless we have a really good perception that it's true and it did happen. And if we were wrong, we'll admit it and we'll update as quick as possible. But we're really trying to sift through all the propaganda. But there very well could be false flags to keep conflicts going. We don't know, by deep state elements or whatever, and you really have to watch that.
Yeah, especially those of us that have been watching this for a while have been warning Americans that there are likely Iranian and other sleeper cells here in the United States. The Soviet Union had an exceptional model for that went on for decades and decades and may still be around for all we know. The Iranians are not necessarily going to expose their sleepers themselves, but they certainly will activate anybody they may have trained, especially, and I think you may be seeing some evidence of that now inside the country with this incident in New York City, the one in Austin, and those kind of things.
It's quite possible, and it likely will happen, as the president said. And this is why you and I have been saying for a long time, you have to be resilient. You have to be able to survive on your own for a while. Could be a cyber attack. Could be something in the water. Could be, transportation links. There's a lot of things that could impact. It could be comms. The cell system could be taken down in part or for a period of time. So you really have to make sure you can survive.
Absolutely. Well, we got a question in the audience. Let's go ahead and take that. AJ, go ahead.
Thank you, Colonel. Mr. Wood, it's always a pleasure. Based on the information I have, as you two gentlemen just discussed, the Chinese were providing intelligence from the sea, and the Russians were also providing intelligence from their end geographically. But there's a school of thought and a discussion going around in my intelligence network, and that is, what are the chances of both of these countries using this particular issue or this military action to test their technologies against the U.S.? Because I have seen the clips of Chinese ships and their GPS and so forth being scrambled by our technologies and along with the Israelis. But this could be possibly, and that's my question, what are the chances of this being these two powers actually dipping their toes into the water, so to speak, to see how well they hold in comparison to what we have? Thank you.
Well, I would say that's been, going on in Ukraine for some time. There's a testing lab happening there as we speak on a lot of these issues. Maybe not the maritime, or there is in the Black Sea and Sea of Azov and all that. There are a lot of shipping routes that are being impacted. But I still am of the opinion Russia doesn't have a national interest in really ginning up a conflict with us. Yes, they're going to test their weapons, but not in a way that's going to impact this war, in my opinion. China's another issue because they really are at an existential place here where they're going to have a lot of demographic problems if they can't provide enough energy to their people. So, or at least in a way that's cost effective, that doesn't drive up prices and put a lot of pressure on the government. And I think that's very likely as to what's happening.
Yeah, do you think the Russians are impacted by their inability to really reach out of that theater of operations right now because they're so invested in that with Ukraine?
Yeah, I think they are. Again, what national interest would they have to pick a fight in the Middle East right now? They've got a big one going on the Ukrainian border. So what would be their goal there? And like I said, they've been testing stuff against us for some time. We have been testing stuff against them for some time. This has been a petri dish in Ukraine for military weapon systems, tactics, even long range stuff inside Russia. And I think in many ways the Russians have been, not as aggressive as they could have been. I mean, we're hitting Moscow with drones, right, on a pretty regular basis, hitting Moscow with drones. Think of it if they launched sea drones and hit with DC. So I mean that's what's happening right now. So I think they've been pretty restrained in their actions, hoping for some kind of deal. And I still hope that we can get this conflict done, find a way to end the Ukraine war, and have some kind of economic cooperation between us and the Russian Federation. I think that would be good for everybody, good for the world, good for global Christianity, and just a good outcome for humanity.
Yeah, my instincts are telling me there's some kind of additional deals in the works to try to get that moved to that in-state goal that Trump wants, which in that killing in Ukraine and Russia. Mm-hmm. I think he's thinking that through, and that's part of his working on this. All right, we're going to take our last break. When we come back, we got to talk about Cuba, Todd, because of what the boss says in this clip when we come back on the Rob Maness Show.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
I've been hearing, as a little boy, I'd be hearing about Cuba. Cuba's a disaster. But I've been hearing so much about Cuba. But Cuba is in its last moments of life, as it was. It'll have a great new life, but it's in its last moments of life the way it is. And but our focus right now is on Iran, and we'll do that. I would say, what will you do? Take about 2 days off, Marco? No, he won't. Maybe an hour. He'll take 1 hour off, and then he'll finish up a deal on Cuba. That'll be an easy one. but it'll be the entire region that we're doing that. Many of you have come today and they say, I hope you can take care of Cuba because you've had problems with Cuba, right? You mentioned.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's our last segment on More War Monday here on the 9th of March, 2026. And we're live on World YouTube and our X Spaces simulcast. And just to flesh out the picture, the strategic picture that my guest, L. Todd Wood, and I have been discussing that centers around the Venezuelan operation and now Operation Epic Fury, we had to show that clip of the President of the United States talking about Cuba being on its last legs, and that Marco Rubio, the son of Cuban immigrants, may have another hat to wear. Todd, what do you think about that? Is he serious? Are there serious indicators that we're seeing on the ground in Cuba that would lead us to believe that this is actually possible? It's something that I've wanted for a long time. I've always wanted a vacation there without having to be spied on by the commies or risk getting taken hostage, and I can't.
It's going to happen. I think you can take that one to the bank. Take that one to Vegas. That is going to happen in some form. Cuba will be liberated, and you're going to have an economic engine down there that is really going to be beneficial for the U.S. You know, I spent a lot of time in the Caribbean when I was trading on the street, and I was down there 10 days a month for probably 10, 15 years, and I know it well. And Cuba is a big hole in that whole ecosystem. And, you know, and I was over in Florida, Tampa, recently, as last night. I was at the Johnny Cash Man in Black show. If you ever get to see that, if you're a Johnny Cash fan, it's fantastic. But I went to the Tampa Bay Hotel, and it is really a flashback to the Gilded Age of the late 1800s, early 1900s. And I didn't realize the whole infrastructure that was based off trade and tourism down into Cuba. You're talking steam lines, you know, railroads all the way to Florida, a whole ecosystem of economic growth and opportunity that just, when Cuba fell, it just kind of got wiped out in the U.S. So there is so much potential if Cuba can come back online economically in our hemisphere as a place of freedom and you know, economic prosperity. That is really going to help the United States. We have so much history in the Caribbean, and we've kind of forgotten it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm a graduate of the University of Tampa, and right there in Tampa, and the building, the main building, was the building that Teddy Roosevelt and his Rough Riders stayed in preparing to depart to go invade Cuba, and partly because of the Cuban population that was already there as business people and those kind of things. So yeah,
that's where I was. I was right there. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's a beautiful building. It
yeah.
Absolutely is. Absolutely is. So do you think, from a geopolitical perspective, that the exiles will move back?
Yeah, some will. I don't know. That's going to be a mess to untangle. I mean, it's been what, 80 years. I mean, that's going to be. I don't know how you put that back, but there'll be obviously some kind of mechanism to do that. The president said it. I mean, they've said we want our property back. So I think they mean it. I wouldn't, when this president and his team come out forcefully, you know, the president can joke and say things, one-off liners, and you can kind of discount them. But I don't think you can discount this. I think they've said it really clearly that Cuba is going to be back in the U.S. fold. And wow, what a golden age that's going to be. And I'm really hopeful that this war will be over and we can focus on that. And so much opportunity. I mean, you're talking just trade and skills needed to build things, go down in there and just build hotels and transportation and comms networks and tourism and all of that. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, all three of these areas of operation, Venezuela, Persia, Iran, and now Cuba, all have been beautiful, prosperity-producing places with fantastic arts and science capabilities that have given to the world until they were taken over by these tyrannical governments. Each of them is slightly different, but having the same outcome. I mean, it's just crushed the spirit of the people. The folks that owned property in Cuba left if they could before they were put in prison or murdered. in firing squads, the same kind of thing in Persia. I hope we start calling it Persia again, because the Persian people and the Jewish people are symbiotic, have a symbiotic relationship. For one, and the Persians of the Iran of the 1970s had a symbiotic relationship with the people of the United States too. I mean, obviously there are problems on both sides of that argument, but it was much better than what we see today, and I'm looking forward to it. So we can focus on that kind of activity, peace, prosperity, the arts, science, and moving America and these allies forward.
Well, I know you have a strong relationship with the Iranian resistance, as I do, and I think you've probably heard them say we hope to see you in Tehran. I actually think that may happen, and I look forward to that. But I'd also love to visit Havana and spend some time there.
Yeah.
I've never been there. I've spent a lot of time in the Caribbean, all over, but never there. So the two places on my bucket list, as they say.
Yeah, two on mine too. I have some other ones. St. Petersburg, the Great Wall of China, the Forbidden City over there. But some of my wife's forbidden me from traveling to a couple of those because she thinks I'll get in trouble. We got another question in the audience before we get to the end of the show. Go ahead, Bishop.
So we're hearing about the SOA, the Shield of Americas. Is Cuba, Venezuela, Greenland, is that kind of falling into a shield as per se like EU, the European Union? So is that where we're going with that? Do you guys know?
I don't know a lot about that. I've got, we have the Miami Independent, miamiindependent.com, which is one of our papers, and we write a lot about Latin America. I actually tasked a reporter to dig into that and put something out on that. I don't think it'll be like the EU from a tyrannical control standpoint, but maybe it will be some type of golden dome involvement as far as missile. I mean, that's going to be the future, right? Is to protect yourself with an AI system that can prevent anything from coming in. I think that's going to happen. I don't know a lot about that, though. Maybe you know more about that, Rob.
Well, they had a big meeting this weekend. My sense of it is that, at least at the outset, it's more of not a security alliance, but a security approach to keep outsiders out of the hemisphere, aka the Monroe Doctrine, the Donroe corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. And I would think, like you, that the Golden Dome concept should be part of that. I think that Greenland should be part of that. The Europeans have shown that they can't defend Greenland, and everything goes back to China, right? Right, Todd? The Chinese and the Russians have been using the Arctic route, the new Arctic route especially. There's been a North and South Arctic route, but now there's a center one. Have been using that to trade with each other, and their illicit sanction-busting trade. And being in Greenland makes that really inadvisable.
Well, again, looking back in all the comments and moves and chessboard moves that we've seen in Venezuela and talk of Greenland, I mean, it kind of all makes sense now, actually. So I think they've had a plan and are executing the plan. And I think that's what we're seeing in Iran. I mean, I think this has been planned for a long time. I think it's quite obvious. I wasn't for a war, but now that we're here, let's make it the end game good for our nation, as opposed to all the other wars we've had, which have not been good for our nation.
Yeah, it's got to end this war. I'm giving the president some grace myself, because I'm not for going to war all the time, as you know, and voted for him because of that. But if he ends this war and ends the Ukraine-Russia war through it, and stiff arms the Chinese so that they calm down and start focusing on their own prosperity and their own people instead of trying to be expansionists and threaten their neighbors and us, I think that's the right thing to do, and that makes it an America First approach. We've heard a lot of complaints about this not being America First. I don't see it that way. I think those folks are completely off base. And if we were, putting 600,000 to 1 million troops together to go invade it and occupy it, I'd be right there with them. But we're not. at least not at this point. I mean, the president's been asked a couple of times, and so is Secretary Hicks, are you ruling out troops on the ground? Talk to that and operational security before we get to the end of the show, so people understand that while the press asking questions like that is understandable, them answering in a way that, well, I'm not going to tell you, and I'm not taking anything off the table, in that way is not just being glib.
No, it's not. It's being responsible. I mean, they should not be. And I think he was pressed on multiple issues today by reporters. And by the way, there's a press briefing in the morning at the Pentagon. I can't make it because I just got back from traveling. But yeah, I think they're handling this from a Department of War standpoint and an information war standpoint. I would like better messaging directly to the American people, but they are handling it in a very responsible way. I can say that. I would point one thing out. I want to keep the spotlight on the Christians in the Middle East and the Levant and Central Asia. They need to have their voices heard in all this. There's a lot of things happening in Lebanon and up in Azerbaijan, et cetera, and we need to keep that community in mind. I'm going to probably be doing more reporting on that, but just for your audience, if you could go to cdm.press, put us in your daily scan a few times a day, you're going to get stuff you're not going to get anywhere else. And early, we're always early, sometimes really early. So just thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I share your stuff. Since you brought that up, before I let you go, the movements that you're seeing in southern Lebanon against Hezbollah by the Lebanese government, and now I saw reporting that the Lebanese president said he wanted to talk with the Israelis, which I don't think has ever happened before. Do you have hope in that's going to roll out into something a lot more firm to protect Christians in Lebanon, as we've covered before?
I hope so. You know, Aoun is the president. He is making, but he doesn't have a lot of power. That's the problem. It's a fractional government. They don't have a lot of power to control things. There is a lot of combat action going on in southern Lebanon and in the Bekaa Valley. I have gotten reports that priests are being hit by drones and that kind of thing, and people that are, you know, that there's an evacuation order and there's some resistance to that evacuation, not just from Hezbollah but from the local residents. So I just want the White House to focus on.
Welcome to Live Up to Freedom, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today on this Wednesday, March 4th, 2026. A very soft, rainy day here in Cincinnati, Ohio. I don't know where you're at, but I hope your day is going well. We are live on worldviewtube.com, WorldviewTube X and Rumble channel, and also WorldviewTube app, which is available for free on your app store. And all you need to do is look for it, download it, turn on your notification, and you'll never miss